The stories shared through apple trees have a lot to tell us about how people and land in this area have shaped each other, weaving together a sense of place through history. But moving forward from the past, these trees can also teach us about how this sense of place can help us to create a better future. And to hear these stories, I began by turning to the Boulder Apple Tree Project's education programs.
We involve students in a class in research on apple trees that answers important questions for the community, like what ecosystem services are these trees providing, and how can we identify trees with fire blight, and things like that.
Having a locally based class helps the students. If the students were familiar with Boulder already, it gave a shifted perspective of maybe places they had walked by day after day but never knew there was an apple tree there.
They actually get to think about how these organisms, these apple trees and the organisms they interact with, are shaping life here in Boulder, Colorado. And I think that really helps students to see how science can directly apply to things around them.
When you think about ecology, you can think about apple trees. You can also think about what's happening on a single leaf.
The other thing, even broader than just apples, though, is that apple trees sit in agricultural urban lands and actually affect the biodiversity of the whole system where that apple tree is. For instance, the pollinators are very much attracted to apple trees and dependent on apple trees. There's a lot of insect communities that rely on apples, different types of birds that actually benefit from apples because of all the insects that are on them.
I think people start thinking more about wildlife because when they think about food in the wild, they think about what are the animals that might be around this tree. I think it makes them more aware of who's eating that apple. I think that's actually really important because a lot of times it's easy to forget that humans aren't the only mammals in the landscape.
The place-based part makes the research more accessible and makes the research a little bit more relevant to the students' lives. At least that's our goal. And I think that happens a lot, especially when students care about where they live. A lot of the apple trees are in Chautauqua, and there's a ton of history around Chautauqua with the people who founded it and also the families who lived here and established orchards way back when. And so that's kind of a fun thing for them to learn about. A lot of our students care a lot about sustainability and food resources, and this project sort of gets at both of those for the Boulder community in thinking about these aspects of the landscape that can provide us with food and how they interact with the people in Boulder.
I saw our local class setting like students I think it also built new connections to the community. Especially our class also partners with Community Fruit Rescue.
So Community Fruit Rescue is a nonprofit that's dedicated to harvesting and distributing the surplus fruit growing in Boulder, Colorado. The actual harvest events, they're right there in people's yards. Often it's in view of the street and all of the neighbors. And people come over and they ask what we're up to. People just out for a walk or neighbors who kind of are like peeking out their windows. And it's just a really great way to actually get people out of their houses and talking together, which I think, it's such a simple thing, but it's such a big step to building community is actually connecting with the people who live near you. And then the bigger piece of that, or the overarching piece of that, is that it's not only connecting you with people who live next door, but because we're donating the fruit throughout the entire Boulder community.
It's interesting for people to want to get food to nourish themselves that come from non-farm sources, that they feel like they can go out into the wild and feed themselves. I think that's pretty impactful and pretty powerful. I think that's something that connects people more to their landscape. And not that getting food from farms is bad, but it's another way to engage with the food in the area. And it's something that brings them in closer contact with the ecosystem that we live in.
I think we're really lucky here in Boulder in that our city is a really green city. Like, we've got a lot of parks, a lot of trees, the mountains are right there, the creek is here, like, we're pretty connected to nature. But I think that even being immersed in that, we still, our culture and our society is still, constantly trying to disconnect us from nature. And I think food is one way to solve that. And it's one way that we, no matter what we do, we have to eat.
So in the city of Boulder today, I think one of the key reasons why people are attracted to to apples is because the trees are this surprising pop of flavor and color in the middle of a contemporary city. Boulder has a vital agricultural history and even a strong agricultural identity and economy today. But for people living and working in the downtown area and the immediate suburbs, or even those taking hikes nearby, for whatever reason, there's not always a clear connection between the ability to grow and eat food in the place where they live and work. And the second reason that I think that apples have this powerful connection with community here is that it really takes a whole community to care for the physical trees and to protect their memories. Anything that I've been able to gather about trees has come from someone else. That memory of trees and the love of trees and the care for trees is strong in Boulder, and I think the Apple Tree Project has just really given it a place to break through and surface in the larger community.